What's up, guys? It's been a minute since I've made one of these YouTube videos, so we're gonna make one now because I am chilling in the Las Vegas airport after playing the World Series main event and a few side events. I had 7 tournament entries and I bricked every single one of them, but I don't want to judge the trip based on the results. I'm actually very happy with how I played. This year I was very focused, much more focused than the previous year, and there were a few factors as to why that is, which I'll get into a little later. But overall, pretty happy with the trip as far as how how I executed and my preparation, etc. Um, but it's always disappointing to leave a live stop without any cashes, especially no deep runs in the main event, which would have been it's the one you're gunning for. So main event, let's talk a little bit about the World Series main. So that's the $10,000 World Series main event. It's every year. It's somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 entries. So it's pretty much a lottery with edge. We all know what kind of variants that would entail. And if you're not familiar, you should check out the Prime Dope. Excuse me, the Prime Dope website where you can look up tournament variants and all that. So going into the main event this year, my main focus was to just not overthink, like just play the poker that I know how to play my edge, and not get too wrapped up in trying to be fancy, but be willing to just go for it when you need to. Because I think one of the things in the main event that makes it so unique and different from other tournaments is you've got a lot of different types of poker players in this thing, and everyone has different motivations. Okay. So, of all the recreational players in the tournament, not all recs are the same. And what ends up happening is because of the buy in and because of the amount of potential money you can make in this tournament, because it's televised, because it has all that prestige and hype around it, what ends up happening is people tend to lean in really hard to their personality or their or like what they want essentially. And so if somebody wants to just cash this thing, they're going to do everything they can to avoid taking risks that puts their stack, their tournament life on the line. And it'll become apparent who these people are after some amount of time of play. And the greatest thing about the structure is you get to sit there for hours and hours and days with these guys. You'll have plenty of time to figure out who's there to just cash, who's there to just look good, who's there to gamble, who's there to try and run everyone over, who's the pro. Like, you've got plenty of time. So the structure is amazing, especially for great players, and especially for cash players too. I think in this tournament, especially this specific tournament, a top cash reg, I would probably take a top cash reg over an MTT guy in this. Um, Assuming that they had some tournament experience, like they understand ICM a bit and whatnot, but so much of your edge is going to come from accumulating chips from weaker players and just kind of running them over. Of course, tournament guys are good at this too. Some of the best tournament players. The the gap in skill between tournament players and cash game players has certainly narrowed over the years. Uh, I'm old school. I've been around for 15 plus years, and historically, tournament players have always been kind of like shit. They're good at a few tactical things, but they tend to have not understood theory very well. And cash guys were the opposite. They understood theory really well, um, but that's with all the tools and advanced training software that we have these days. It's hard to argue against theory in like what it is. So like you see the gap just being a little bit more narrow. But let's go back to the idea of the recreational players. So the thing about the recs, that, like I said, they all have different motivations. Some of them are just there to cash, and the ones that are just there to cash are gonna just bleed their chips off. And against these guys, all you have to do is just raise a ton into them, and then c-bet a ton into them. And if they call, then you just barrel the turn. And then if they call it twice, now you're gonna have to make some kind of soul read as to whether you should fire three or not, because like their range is going to be much stronger going into the river than what it should be. But with that said, people are willing to make huge folds in this tournament. And if you can figure out who's willing to make huge folds and not, then that's going to give you some more edge. Now, I will say, like, if you've never played live before, it might be a bit tricky to feel your way around these different opponent types. But one of the things with the main event is I've found I play a decent amount of live tournaments, so I've been in the weeds a little with these things. I've played high rollers, I've played $1,000 main event type tournaments. I've played the World Series main. I've played side events. I played a lot of different types of formats, and different stakes and different skill like skill levels in the tournament sphere. And I can say that the main event is a super unique tournament, and I think the more you play it, the more edge you're going to get, because you're going to get a better understanding and feel and experience with how these people are going to act. Now, I will say, like, you can watch live streams too, and I think for next year, I'm going to really dig through the live streams and watch them, because I played this event twice now, and just getting more reps in with how people act and how they react to aggression and what type of aggressive moves they make is so key. Of course, when you've got the television on, like, people might play a little different because they have different motivations. So, to give you an example, there's this guy, the Poker Go or whatever, the people that are chatting, they gave him the nickname of Prime Time. His name was similar to Prime Time. It wasn't Prime Time, but they gave him the nickname of Prime Time. So shout out to Prime Time, by the way. He seems like a pretty cool dude. So the thing about Prime Time, I think he was maybe a more recreational player, but like a poker enthusiast. And I think he was put in by his, like, a poker team, so to speak, back in whatever state he's from in the U.S. And this guy, he had a personality. He was wearing a T-shirt that said something funny on it, and he's a bit of a different character than someone like a pro from Europe, right? And so when he was on stream, he made some plays that were, I don't want to say like questionable or anything, but like he definitely made some plays that insinuate that he might be there to put on a show for his friends back home. Like he wants to he wants to make sure everyone's having a good time and that sort of thing. And if you can get that read and you have an idea that, hey, this guy, he's on the stream, he wants to put on a show for people back home, and even if you're not on stream, gotta adjust this camera here. Got to get a selfie stick, boys. Holding it with my arm, boys and girls. Shout out to the women in poker, of course. There seems to be more of them these days, for sure. And I know some of y'all are watching my seminars, so shout out to you. But yeah, even if someone's not on stream, they still might want to take a picture with their cell phone, right? About that, they might show the bluff and then whip out their phone so they can show their friends or whatever. It's these little details that you want to be paying attention to live. I think live tells are, I mean, they're definitely important. Like, some people are going to be massive tell boxes and just clearly like acting defensive when they don't want to put a lot of money in the pot, and acting different when they are okay with putting a lot of money in the pot. And that's mostly from the recreational players. You do have to watch out for some of the regs that are a bit more tricky, can reverse this stuff, and you don't want to read too much into it. And I would say if you're up against someone who's not like a top level pro, but as a reg, and they're kind of like, maybe they got sunglasses on and they're staring at you all day. Against those guys, I think it's a good idea to kind of mix it up a little. Like if you have the self-awareness to know what sort of behaviors you exhibit, then you can, act in different ways. Just be careful. Like if you're gonna act, you need to be able to sell it. Um, Otherwise, you're probably just gonna come off as being obviously, um, obviously just full of it or whatever. But yeah, so the thing about the live tells though is it's all about context and like understanding people's motivations and their background, their psychology, how much the money means to them, what's important to them. All that stuff can play a role in deciding one way or another which way you're going to go in a certain line. So like the main event is it's a real true test of poker, I think, because not only do you need the technical skill, but you also need the endurance. You need the stamina. You need to be in good shape to be able to handle this. But the other thing is you need to understand the psychology aspect, and part of that's through experience, but another part of that is studying psychology and human behavior. So I talk a lot about nonlinearity in my seminars, and what it means is basically things that are not directly applicable to the spot will impact the EV of the spot. So, example, main event, you learn poker strategy, GTO, and how to deviate from it to exploit your opponents. But in order to exploit to the max, you're going to want to understand psychology and human behavior, some tells as well. But I think the tells is even secondary to the psychology and the human motivations, because those are going to be your biggest tells, really. And a lot of this can be gathered through how people dress, how they act, what type of topics they talk about at the table, whether they talk at all. Um, you can find out a lot about someone, or at least take some educated guesses and apply some Bayesian theory to lean one direction or the other. And you might say, well, isn't that kind of like stereotyping and profiling people? Absolutely. You absolutely. I mean, this channel is not meant to be PC, so yeah, you should pretty much stereotype people until you have a reason not to at the poker table. Of course, treat everyone equally in your personal life and real life, but as soon as you're in that game, you need to look at the table for what it is. And I think part of what helps achieve this level of skill that's hard to quantify is just paying attention in day-to-day life how people act. So if you're an observer, a curious observer of interactions with people and just the world in general, then I think that's going to contribute to some main event edge. Okay, so we talked a little bit about just the structure and everything being slow, which is good for the skilled player, the endurance player, and then the fact that there's so many different player types, being able to profile and size people up psychologically to understand their motivations will help give a bit of like it'll help give you a bit more information as far as what you can get away with, what you can't. Might just leave it at that for this video. It's been main event reflections, some ideas on what to think. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll talk a little bit about what happens if you get on the feature table or whatever. So I was not on a feature table in the main event, but years ago when I played EPT Monaco, I ran deep in that tournament, and um, I ended up on. I don't remember if I ended up on the main feature table or if it was one of the side televised tables, but like it might have been the feature table. I actually can't remember exactly which table it was. There's 3 tables if I recall correctly. 2 of them were like side tables being filmed the whole time, and then one main one. I think I was on the main one for a while, but it might have just been the sides. Anyway, going back to EPT Monaco, this was about 10 years ago, and man, I was like a nervous wreck in that tournament because for one thing, I was taking a shot with not much bankroll, and I had most of myself in a 10K. It was a 10K back then. Now it's a 5K. So I was playing for $1 million. I wasn't playing for like 20% or whatever. I was playing for the whole lot. Um, Converted to Canadian or whatever. Actually, it was probably more than that. I think the first prize was like 1.5 million euros. So I had about 70%. Anyway, um, and before I talk about like managing the live thing, let's just talk about the bankroll management for a second. I think if you're really early in your career and you have one of those random shots where you satellite into like a 10K or something, or like the World Series main, or maybe an EPT main, just fucking go for it, man. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? I mean, you can sell a little bit to pay for your expenses, sell a third, whatever. But if you have like a 20K bankroll or 30K bankroll and you want a seat to a 5K main or a 10K main, make it worth it, because the potential upside, like the utility of winning that thing, is so massive, especially early, because of the compounding effect of that money, that like it's worth the risk, even though on paper and bankroll management it'll say like it's retarded. But it's only a one shot thing, right? It's not like you're just gonna go play a 10K and then re-enter, and then if you bust, re-enter again, and then if you still have time to re-enter again, you're gonna dust 3 or 4 bullets in this thing. That's not really how this works. Um, it's one shot. That's all you get. Main event's not re-entry, so that one for sure is just one shot. And if you lose, you lose. Like, whatever. So I think in terms of utility of money, it's something you want to factor in when you're considering bankroll management. And this applies later in your career too. If you've already built up a bit of a nest egg, bit of a bankroll with poker, and you're sitting pretty fine. Maybe your ABI is like $100, and you're willing to play up to 1Ks or something on your own dime. Well, if you're willing to play 1Ks on your own dime, I think it's foolish to play the main event as a 1K, because this tournament has such a massive asymmetric risk reward that like you just want to be able to give yourself the chance to have a piece of that top prize. So like I wouldn't sell 90% if 1K was the most I would take. I'd be looking at more like, I don't know. You got to pick the number for yourself, but it should be several multiples of that for sure, because you want to be betting big when you have big edge, and then when you have smaller edge, like in a regular 1K, that's the time to dial it back and maybe sell a piece. Okay. Um, so like how much asymmetry is in the payoff is going to reflect what kind of shot you take. Uh, like it doesn't make much sense to, let's say you take half of yourself in the main. It doesn't make sense to take half of yourself in every single 10K and only take half of yourself in the main. If you're buying into 10Ks for 50%, then like you should probably just smack the main and maybe have a couple swaps, because swaps are totally fine. Your EV is gonna be a little better. I mean, it might be roughly the same, or even a little bit worse, because you might swap people that have less edge than you. But overall, your realized expectation is gonna be higher if you swap, and that's a whole math problem for another day. But just take my word for it, unless you don't believe me, in which case go work the math yourself and figure it out. But it's Sharpe ratio and all that stuff. I'm not gonna talk in detail in this video about it, but it actually does make sense to swap even with someone who has a little bit lower ROI than you. And don't go swapping with everyone who's just like a fish, okay? But yeah, with that, like you want to judge your bankroll management based off the asymmetry. And this is a concept that is in trading as well, trading stocks. Like when you have a big asymmetric risk reward that comes up, you want to bet really, really big, because your EV is really, really high and you want to smack that thing. If it's just a regular old trade, a regular old basic setup that might work half the time or whatever, you can have a lot more variance with that, a lot less edge, so you're not going to press it as hard. The potential payoff just isn't there to get like say 20 to 30 to 1 returns. It might be like a 3 to 1 return or something that you get on a regular trade. But yeah, so talk about bankroll management. Now let's flip back to the whole live situation. Like, what do you do if you get on a feature table? Well, I guess what to expect is more like what I should talk about, because what to do is just play your game. But what to expect if you're the type of person who's like really introverted and doesn't really like the lights on you, the camera on you. For me, in my experience, that was me back then. I'm a little more neutral to it now, hence I'm doing this. But like, I what was nervous for me about that tournament wasn't as much the playing for that much money. Definitely a factor though, but it was it was like the cameras on me, and it was nerve wracking. Like they put the microphone on you, and like the whatever battery pack for the microphone, and you've got the lights on the feature tables, they're beaming in your eyes. um, yeah, and like the thing too about these main events is the media takes it very seriously, right? Like if you're a poker player and you understand variance, you understand how the game works, you're just there trying to play your best, and whatever the result is, the result is. But they put a lot of weight into like the people who go deep and like who's gonna win, and they treat it like a sport. Really, they treat it like a sport, and that was a bit nerve wracking for me because there's just so much going on. There's so much stimulation. Um, so if you're like if you don't have experience with that and you're like pretty shy and or just quiet in general, like it's I will warn you, it's gonna be a difficult process. So what you might want to do is meditate on that, and just before you play with these main events, visualize yourself on the final table or under the lights on stream. Just like try and imagine yourself there just playing solid poker and like tuning it all out. And I think that might contribute to less stress and being a little bit more composed, because I've been on a stream after that before, and it was not nearly as stressful. It was like, oh, I've done this before, I know how this works. um but yeah, like just be aware that that stress might come on if you happen to draw the stream table. Less likely in the main event, of course, it's just so many people, but if you do make a deep run on one of these things, you're going to be on it, so just keep that in mind. Oh yeah, and like this is the craziest thing. So I satellited into that tournament from whatever. I played like a $50 satellite to a 500 satellite, then the 500 satellite to the 10K package, and I shipped it or whatever the numbers were. And Poker Stars at the time, they were running this thing, and they had all this information, right? Like they had it in like their data or whatever. Um, so they approached me before I played this one time, one day. It was like day 4 or something. They came up to me before playing, and they're like, "Hey, Ryan, uh, would you be willing to do an interview because you satellited into the tournament and we want to hear about your experience?" Oh, whatever, blah blah. And it caught me off guard because I was just walking like in the tournament area, and it was like a group of 6 people on the media team just like hounded me and surrounded me and were like, "Hey, will you do an interview?" And they're like pointing the mic in my face, and like the cameras are rolling. Like, oh, and I wasn't prepared for this at all. And it was so funny because they asked me a question, and I just stood there like a deer in headlights, just like I mumbled a few words, and then they're looking back at me like, "Oh God, this is going terribly." And then in my head I'm like, "Oh God, they're looking at me like this is going terribly, and it's going terribly," and it was just absolutely hilariously brutal. I mean, they should have aired it just for the comedy value. It probably would have got so many clicks. Like, this new guy flops an interview, but yeah, just a little insight on the kind of nerves that can come up in this sort of thing, and I think the way to get around that, uh, I mean, I guess if you're like a socially anxious person, you're gonna want to practice socializing in general. So get out there, get yourself out there. That was pretty much me in like my early 20s. But over time, it gets a lot easier. It's no big deal. If the camera's on me now, I don't care so much. It's whatever. You basically get desensitized to it. So, and there's nothing really to fear. To be honest, I think a lot of it just comes down to fearing what people think or what's gonna what's the worst that's gonna happen. I mean, you say something silly and maybe they air it and then everyone laughs and then they forget about it next week. Uh, Unless you did something like really crazy, then people will probably remember it forever. But in which case, you could always use that to your advantage in some way, I'm sure. Um, yeah. So those are the things to kind of watch out for. Lots of different types of recreational players, and I mean lots of different types, because you're dealing with individuals here. Um, and over time, what I've been doing in poker is I do a lot less like labeling people in broad terms like fish or reg or whatever, and I look more for like specific characteristics, behaviors, tendencies, and I like to group them all together and see which ones are connected and overlapping and which ones look like outliers to try and paint a clear picture of how this person thinks. um, and I think as you practice that over time, it's harder to do online, but in live settings it's easier because you can see the people, right? So you have more information at your disposal. um, but overall, I think that's the approach that you want to take, is really find some specific pieces of information for each person and use that to paint a clear picture of how they might act in certain situations. Because in the main, you're going to get some pretty big equity spots, some high pressure spots. Anyway, let's leave it at that, guys. You got a pretty good idea of how to manage this main event, how to manage main events as far as strategy and bankroll management, what to expect. Uh, and like I said, if you're like a shy or introvert or socially anxious person, um, that's gonna that's gonna be amplified 10x if you end up on a feature table. So that's something you probably want to start tackling before you go somewhere. Um, but yeah, don't be in it with your bankroll management when it comes to asymmetric risks. Bet big, um, but don't bet the ranch. Just bet big enough that it'll hurt a bit when you bust, but you got to take the pain with the gain, right? Because think of how great it'll be when you finally ship that thing, if you ever do. All right, that's it for me. We'll call it here. Good luck at the tables, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.